J-Lo's love might not cost a thing, but that's not the case for many people. Finances are the #2 cause for divorce, which means for many couples, love do cost a thing. And if couples can't agree on finances while they're in love, imagine how messy it can get once they decide to split. To avoid much of the financial mess that comes with getting divorced, couples should get comfortable talking about money before the nuptials and consider signing a prenup. Contrary to popular belief, prenups aren't just for rich people, and to help spread the word about how helpful and cost-effective prenups can be, I spoke with Crystal Villasenor, a New York divorce lawyer, to bring you all the deets. A prenuptial agreement, or a prenup, is a contractual agreement between you and your soon-to-be spouse that determines how you will split your assets and handle your finances in the event that you get divorced. The key to creating a successful prenup is to make sure both parties are well represented. According to Crystal, many couples come to her wanting her to draft up a quick prenup that both of them are ready to sign. But the first thing she tells them is that they need to hire a second attorney. Why? Because a prenup involves one person agreeing to forego something for the other person in the event that they decide to get divorced. To ensure both people understand what they're consenting to give up, each person needs their own advocate to help them through the prenuptial agreement process. This way, neither person is underrepresented in the final agreement. Hiring 2 attorneys also makes the contract more enforceable if someone decides to dispute it during the divorce. While a prenup is a legally binding agreement, that doesn't mean that you can't contest it. One easy way for a divorce lawyer to get a prenup thrown out is for them to say that their client didn't receive proper counsel before signing. To avoid this pitfall, each person should hire their own attorney. The reason prenups aren't just for rich people is because regardless of socioeconomic status, most couples are forced to answer the same basic questions when getting divorced. Who gets the cars? What are you going to do with the house? Did one of you give up years of work experience and income growth to stay home and take care of the kids? And are you going to be compensated for that? These aren't only questions that rich people face when getting divorced, but rather questions that most people face when getting divorced. Your prenup can help iron out a lot of these questions up front. In addition to covering all of the big stuff, you can also include other items. Valuable antiques, collectibles, some furniture that you love, or even pets can all be included in the prenup. As long as you both agree to it, it can get added. But how are you supposed to predict what you're going to want in 10 years, 15 years, or even longer than that? You're not. Rather than thinking of your prenup as a static document, Crystal advises that you think of it more like a living document. She says you don't want to do a prenup and just put it in a drawer and never go back to it. Instead, she suggests revisiting your document every few years and taking stock of how your circumstances have changed. Have you acquired more assets like rental properties or substantially grown your businesses? Or maybe you had kids and one person left the workforce, or you became homeowners. When substantial life changes have occurred, it may be time to revise your prenup. If you end up getting divorced later, the most recent document will be the one that's enforced in court. According to Crystal, the cost of a prenup can vary widely depending on what city you live in and how many assets you have, but in general, there are 2 rules of thumb. Number 1 is that the higher the cost of living in your city, the more expensive it's going to be for you to hire an attorney. And number 2 is that the more assets you have, the longer the negotiation process between the 2 attorneys is going to take. So it will probably cost less for a broke college grad from Idaho to get a prenup than it will for a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur in New York. Regardless, the expense of getting a prenup will almost always be less than the cost of going through a contested divorce. That's because not only will you be paying legal fees for 1, but 2 divorce lawyers, and there are also a lot of other hidden expenses when it comes to getting divorced that many couples don't anticipate. These can include things like moving expenses, the fees associated with buying and selling new homes, the cost of getting new furniture for your home, or the fee to set up new utilities, and the list goes on. Paying up front to iron out the big stuff with a prenup could leave both parties with more money to cover these unforeseen expenses once the divorce is finalized. If you're already married and didn't realize that a prenup could benefit you before the marriage, no worries. You can get what's called a postnuptial agreement, or a postnup. These are basically the exact same agreement as a prenup, just with a new name, and you should approach the process the same as you would a prenup. So prenups can be beneficial for pretty much any couple, and these are Crystal's top tips to make sure that your prenup is easy, stress-free, and enforceable. The first tip is that each person should list out their assets and liabilities. Getting a healthy financial discussion going is super important to make sure that the prenup process goes smoothly, and couples should begin having an open and honest dialogue about their finances well before they begin the prenup process. Tip number 2 is don't spring a prenup on your partner right before the wedding. Instead, start the conversation early in the engagement or 30 to 60 days before the wedding at the latest. If you spring a prenup on someone right before the wedding and they feel obligated to sign it, that could be grounds for a judge to dismiss it later on. Remember, each person needs to receive proper counsel before signing a prenup. If your wedding is just around the corner and you don't think you have enough time to get a prenup done properly, then consider bringing up the idea of doing a postnup instead. Tip number 3 is to get separate attorneys. The goal of a prenup is to make sure each person is well represented and gets their fair share of assets in the event of a divorce. To avoid conflicts of interest or one person being misinformed, each person should seek their own counsel. If a couple decides not to do that, it could be grounds for a judge invalidating the prenup later on. Tip number 4 is don't involve family and friends. Keep the opinions of family and friends to the wedding planning, not the prenup. All couples handle their finances differently, and what works for one couple may not work for you. Your prenup is legally binding only to you and your spouse and should represent the two of you, not everyone else. Tip number 5 is revisit it and make updates. Many people get married young with few assets but acquire more wealth and assets as they age. To make sure your prenup is keeping up with your lifestyle, revisit it every few years and make adjustments as necessary. Nobody wants to think about a divorce, but the fact is that they're very common and finances are a common cause of them. Prenups can help a couple tackle the big issues up front and avoid making a divorce even more traumatic. They can also help both people come out of the divorce happier with the outcome and with more money. If you're engaged and looking for an attorney to help with a prenup or already married and considering a postnup, I've included Crystal Villasenor's information, the attorney that I interviewed for this video, in the description box below, so make sure to check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in this week with me, you guys. I hope this video helped you navigate the prenup process and figure out if you want to get one or if you want to get a postnup. So if it did, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up because I want to be a rich bitch just as much as you and it helps me with the algorithm. I release a new video on personal finance, investing, and building your wealth every Saturday. So if those are things that you are interested, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and I will see you soon. Bye!